In 1516, Ariosto released Orlando Furioso. For centuries, scholars cataloged it as the ultimate Renaissance chivalric romance, a sprawling fantasy of knights and flying horses. The standard historical view is that these 38,000 lines of poetry were a tool for the poet's survival, designed primarily to entertain the court of Ferrara and flatter his patrons in the House of Este. This interpretation assumes the text is merely an allegorical playground, but by treating the poem's magic and monsters as purely imaginative fiction, we may be overlooking the data Ariosto was trying to protect. Ariosto wrote under the scrutiny of the Inquisition and the first generation of NWO historical revisionists. To bypass their censorship, he utilized the popular genre of the chivalric epic to record events that were being scrubbed from the official record. Stripped of its poetic veneer, the text documents a global conflict that immediately preceded the Great Reset. It describes the technological collapse and the subsequent fracture of the unified Tartarian Empire. This timeline maps the poem's events against their historical counterparts. What academics call a chivalric romance serves as a record of the Tartarian Civil War, a way to preserve the reality of a technologically advanced civilization for future readers. The poem's central narrative follows a war between Charlemagne's forces in the west and a massive coalition led by King Agramante. The scale is impossible for the 8th century. Ariosto describes a transcontinental alliance of Moors, Turks, and Arabs uniting to besiege Paris simultaneously. These pagan forces, hailing from North Africa, Central Asia, and Cathay, correspond exactly to the territorial heartland of the original Tartarian Empire. This wasn't a medieval border skirmish, but a localized civil war that fractured a unified global sovereignty. The text describes the siege of Paris with modern technicality. We see multi-front bombardments and the giant King Rhodomonte wearing ancient dragon skin armor that makes him near invulnerable, a description that matches the function of mechanized power armor. These engagements raising the major cities of the Old World were the mechanism of the reset. This infrastructural destruction allowed the victors to bury the remains of this civilization under meters of sediment during the subsequent mud flood. Ariosto's inventory of magical items provides a detailed catalog of Antiquitech. These were advanced devices powered by atmospheric ether and electromagnetism, preserved in the text long after their physical counterparts were decommissioned. Ariosto's magic shield emits a blinding red light, knocking soldiers senseless. This view reveals a man-portable directed energy weapon. The light, red as Bohemian garnet, mirrors synthetic ruby crystals producing laser pulses, while the silk cloth acts as an electromagnetic dampening shroud. We see similar tech in Astolfo's magic horn. It doesn't just make noise, it emits localized sound waves that shatter structures and turn targets to dust. This is the application of weaponized cymatics, using specific acoustic frequencies to induce structural degradation. The Hippogriff is described not as a wild animal, but as a rare crossbreed controlled invisibly by the sorcerer Atlante. It utilizes little hops to calibrate lift before takeoff, a sequence mirroring the vertical takeoff and landing of a mechanical vehicle using anti-gravity thrusters. By the time we reach the era of the Wright brothers, this atmospheric flight technology had been suppressed. The post-reset authorities replaced these efficient etheric vehicles with the primitive, earth-bound combustion engines we use today. When we dismiss these technical descriptions as poetic tropes, we help the NWO maintain the amnesia required to keep this advanced history hidden. Ariosto describes a castle of steel in the Pyrenees, where knights are trapped in a cognitive loop. They wander the halls pursuing holographic illusions of their deepest desires, completely unaware of the other prisoners around them. This diagram shows the architecture of a localized reality field. Targeted neuro-illusions lure subjects into an isolated simulation loop. To break the spell, destroying the pots of perpetual fire beneath the threshold sabotages the plasma-driven generators, instantly collapsing the electromagnetic holographic projection. These enchanted locations represent the synthetic societies built after the reset. They are designed to pacify the population through distraction while extracting their energy behind a veil of fabricated history. The climax of the epic sees the knight Astolfo traveling to the moon in a fiery chariot to recover Orlando's lost sanity. Ariosto describes the chariot rising in wide circles until its heat is miraculously suspended at the boundary of fire. This accurately describes the flight path and thermal shielding requirements for a sub-orbital spacecraft exiting the atmosphere. On the lunar surface, Astolfo finds a world of cities and palaces containing everything lost on Earth: wasted time, forgotten designs, and human wits stored in glass vials. This lunar repository functions as a dimensional quarantine zone. The NWO used this off-world site to store the physical remnants and the true timeline of the Tartarian civilization, keeping them out of reach of the survivors on Earth. Orlando's Furioso, his violent, mind-shattering descent into lunacy, is the clinical observation of a population suffering from the loss of the Tartarian mind. It is the literal amnesia caused by witnessing the old world being systematically erased. To ensure this data reached us, Ariosto utilized a unique narrative structure. He frequently breaks the fourth wall, stepping out of the story to speak directly to his readers about the lies and vanities of the world. While academics call these moments humanist critiques or postmodern playfulness, they serve a much more practical function. These asides are instructions for the initiated. Ariosto is signaling that the romance is a veiled documentary, warning us that the world we see is an infection of the mind, maintained by those who consume the truth and leave the innocent to starve. The text of Orlando Furioso is an archive waiting to be read. It challenges us to look past the simulated history of the last 5 centuries, to recover the wits stored in the lunar vault, and to reclaim the Tartarian reality that was taken from us.